Hey everyone, we are live. This is Arsenal Fan Circle Thursday night. I've got with me Tony Turner, Stan the Man, and Rohan. Welcome everyone back for another episode. It's an Arsenal roundup show. We're going to go through a few different topics. The Newcastle takeover. What will that mean for the Premier League? What will it mean for Arsenal? Um, Ozil situation, the wage deferral, the Thomas Partey speculation, and we're going to start off with this one, folks. Um, four Arsenal players have been found to break the lockdown rules, and Stan, I mean, we um, criticized criticized Tottenham players. You didn't want me to go to you first.
Well, they've stuffed me now, haven't they? Because a week ago, when it was Tottenham, I was saying to anyone that would listen that it should be a fine imposed on the club and a points deduction. So they've not really left me with any wiggle room at all.
No, I mean, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, right?
Yeah,
That old saying.
they shouldn't be doing it. I mean, all right, they're saying that Lacazette was just out talking to a valet on his driveway and that, but you just got to be a little bit more shrewder with social media and everything. Right, everything you do is out there, right? Everything you do. Oh, come on, give me a break. You're gonna do this one?
There's the star of the show, Stan.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah, you got to be a little bit more clever, right, with social media and that. I mean, I actually haven't seen the story or the pictures. I've just sort of like heard in passing.
Yeah, Rohan, I was talking to my here earlier, and I wouldn't have thought that it would be three of our more experienced persons, human beings that are experienced should know better, right?
Yeah, well, look at the people who are involved. So for two, I think there is some sort of excuse, right? One is Lacazette, like Stan mentioned, who was out talking to the valet and his own property. So I don't think that constitutes being out and about. But like Stan said, the vultures, that is the social media people and the people, the paparazzi are always around. So he should know better. Pepe apparently was out with his family. Apparently, he's got like enough people staying with him to play five-a-side, both sides. So, I'd like to join there. But, if that's the case, then that's fine. But again, if he was out in public, then he should know that he's a personality. People will sort of get drawn to him. And, he just shouldn't do that. I think he has enough space, or he might have enough space in his backyard to have a kickabout. You can drop a few players there.
Yeah.
And then the two other players who, per Stan's, argument last week, have cost us points are players who cost us points on a regular basis. So that's Xhaka and David Luiz. And I was sort of like making a case last week how Xhaka is a leader in the team, etc., etc. And then he goes ahead and does this.
Yeah, he really put you in it, Rohan. He really put you in it last week. You defended him pretty hard.
Exactly. And then he goes ahead and does that. So absolutely disgraceful. They shouldn't do that. Jokes apart, these guys, like, the same thing holds true like what we said last week. These guys are public figures. These guys are public personalities, and they should know better. So, Arsenal Football Club as such should take action on them. But I think it's slightly different from Tottenham still, because it's not organized by the club. It's not like Arteta is taking them around in their bus, picked each one up and sort of taken them to the park. It's these individuals, but that's foolish nonetheless.
I can see that difference. And of course, we know David Luiz is just going out trying to like pinch people's noses. And that's really frowned upon as well in the current coronavirus situation. Not allowed to touch people's noses, right, Tony?
Nope. Can't even touch your own nose, let alone somebody else's nose.
You can't even pick your own nose. Yeah, shout out to Chahat. He's in the house here. Newcastle takeover. will also impact the Champions League. Wait for Mbappe to score the winner in 2021 Champions League winner. And yeah, we're going to get into that in a little bit. And a fellow dance merchant here, Danny. Well, I don't think Danny was part of that, was he, Stan?
Right, Danny. He was kind of there in spirit, wasn't he? They had a picture of Danny in the video.
He was there.
Mike had it.
Big, huge picture. Yeah, shout out to Stan, the human robot. He's the only one that had moves. We were all like scalded chickens. We were like, but yeah, not really good. Not a really good look for the players to be breaking lockdown rules, especially an ex Arsenal captain and what should be one of the senior figures in David Luiz, and some people pointing to him to be a captain figure. You know, Stan.
Yeah, as I say, I haven't seen the story, but it's only what I've been picking up on, and you guys are actually giving me more background. But you would think that those two senior players should know better and should be setting a better example, especially as it's, you know, everybody's been, you know, everyone had a spotlight on Tottenham when they did it, right?
Yep. Rohan, yeah, so you wouldn't expect this from the experienced players. The younger players are towing the line, apparently not getting in trouble, and you have David Luiz and Granit Xhaka.
Well, it always seems the older players for us who sort of break line, right? You've got other stories coming in as well, where you know, where the senior players are sort of not complying with what's being said, rightly or wrongly. But in this case, definitely it was wrong, and that needs to be taken into account.
And the club is going to take some action, right? There'll be fines levied to the players. So yeah, I mean, not a good look, but let's move forward. And a nice segue is to probably talk about Thomas Partey. So there's been some speculation. Tony, some strong speculation. Thomas Partey has actually agreed to come to Arsenal, but what actually has to happen now is the two clubs have to arrive at a meeting point in terms of transfer or swap or whatever is going to happen.
You don't see what they need to negotiate buyout unless they're trying to include Lacazette in with it. I'd still just pay his buyout.
Rohan, there's quite a few different ways this could go, Rohan. There could be Torreira could be sold to Italy, a club in Italy. I think AC Milan, if I'm not mistaken, for a certain amount of money, for 35 million. And we could pick up Partey for an extra, just add 15 million to that. And does this tell us that the Arsenal this is early days, nothing's really happened yet, but is the Arsenal knock louder or different to other knocks on the door?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you know, the Arsenal lock is different, but this story has evolved, and I think this last few days has given a lot of fodder to, you know, us Arsenal fans, to football fans in general, to talk about this, something new happening at least. And you know, so the Partey situation, till yesterday, it looked to me like it was very clear, because his father came out and he said that you know, that Arsenal and Atletico Madrid are in talks. And then today his agent has come out and said that all of what his father said is false, and there is no conversation that's happening. And you know, it could be either one of them. It could be his father telling the truth, and you know, or it could be his agent who's telling the truth, and his father's just trying to get him a better deal at Atletico. So let's see where this goes. You know, a lot of this speculation will continue until there is a resolution of, you know, whether the season is getting completed or not, you know, what sort of revenue clubs bring in, etc., etc. We do know that Atletico Madrid aren't the most you know, the richest club in the world. They don't have a lot of cash you know, being thrown around. And in fact, last year they spent over 120 million on João Felix, and you know, because of that, they must be cash strapped. And if the situation arises, we should go in there swiftly and handle the matter with a lot of efficiency. And if that requires it
Yeah.
to be a cash deal, then do a cash deal. If it requires there to be a swap deal, I would prefer to give them Lacazette than Torreira,
Yep.
because for me, settling
Yep.
Torreira is basically taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I would like to see Torreira and Partey, both of them in the Arsenal midfield, battling it out. And let's see where this goes. But this story is still to evolve and to come to its conclusion. Nothing is done yet, and yeah, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, I think you're right, Rohan. Generally, Stan, with these situations, if it's not done quickly, it probably won't get done. And Rohan is very, very correct and insane. Players and even other coaches use Arsenal sometimes to sweeten their own deals. So, a la Brendan Rodgers recently at Leicester City. So it could be that the father here is actually correct in saying it's going to happen, but the agent wants to tamp down that speculation. What do you think, Stan?
Thomas Partey speculation. I mean, you could have had a much bigger box there and put in how many names. It's looking on Twitter over the last 5 days. It's probably the question that you should be asking is what players are not being linked with Arsenal. It seems like anyone that can kick a ball and plays football for a living we're linked with them. Do you know what I mean? I think it's balderdash. I really do. I just don't buy into any of it because, to me, I mean, you look at the stories and it's like Arsenal are interested in. Arsenal are looking at. They're talking to his entourage. Was one I saw. The guy's got a buyout clause. If Arsenal want him, just ring up Atletico. We know they're going to answer the phone because everybody's in at the moment. No one's out. Put the deal down on the table. Send the fax. Offer the money and then talk to the player directly. And you could say exactly the same for the French centre-back, Upamecano. There's all this speculation and interested in and at the top of the list and Arsenal circling. He's got a buyout clause as well. If there's any intent, you can do the deal now. You don't have to wait till the window opens if you've got a buyout clause before you can make inquiries with the selling club. So I also think that someone like Thomas, someone like Thomas Partey, I just think that someone like him and even Upamecano would have much better suitors vying to get their signature at the moment. Clubs, that are probably able to give them a sure stab at continued Champions League games and we're talking about reducing players' wages by 12.5%. So how are we having that conversation on one side, and then on the next side we're going over to what Atletico Madrid, and we're going to throw down 50 million euros there. We're going to lock up RB Leipzig, chuck down another 50 million there. The other name that I've seen circulated around, which is the one that gives me the biggest belly laughs, Kai Havertz. Apparently we're like a hot tip. That's 100 million right there for that kid. So I don't know where all this. I don't buy into any of it. And although I want some of these players and I would love to see them in an Arsenal shirt, until I see that picture with them holding up the shirt with Mikel Arteta's arm wrapped around them with a big cheesy grin on their coupons, I'm just trying not to get sucked in.
Yeah, and it's going to be very difficult right now. Nobody really knows what the economic circumstances will be in the coming weeks or months. So we're really in a holding pattern. You're going to see this speculation. But from what we understand, the player actually does want to come to Arsenal. And it's up to the two clubs to negotiate on that. And maybe they're waiting as well, Rohan, to see what happens economically.
Exactly. There's the factor of whether we get paid or we have to pay out for this season happening or not happening, right? Whether this season is concluded or not, because you have to remember there's there's about 9 more games left in the season for us. Then there were cup matches that were left. There were, the Champions League matches, Europa League matches. We were out of them, but those were left. So that's one. And then how this season is going to finish if we indeed don't play those games, and that's something that we will discuss, I know, later. But whether we will make it in the Champions League or not, and similarly whether Atletico Madrid will make it into the Champions League or not, because right now, given their current spot, I think they're down and they're not making the Champions League spot just by the league table, but by the coefficient. I'm sure that they will make it because they've been a regular with the Champions League there in La Liga. So that will change things massively, with the Champions League income coming in or not for them. And similarly for us. So I agree with Stan. Right now, it's just paper talk. There might be some intent.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Arsenal is a club that could entice players to think about moving here. We still have that knock. But, I just think that the executives are looking at it.
I just don't think it's a knock anymore. That knock probably more now resembles one of those, those clown horns they have in the car, like, those clown fog horns. Probably something more like that. You hear them pull up outside.
Ooga.
Or Stan is that knock where you really don't want the person on the other side to open the door, so you do the lightest knock and then turn around and say, "Okay, no one's home. We're leaving."
Yeah. We don't knock anymore. We just shout for the letterbox.
That sounds like the ice cream seller guy who I can always listen to when I'm out in my front yard, but I never seem to find him.
Yeah. This is the optimist in me, but Danny has said if Upamecano or Partey came to Arsenal, you would need to have them examine for brain who would come to a mid-table Europa League team. And here's the optimistic side of me. Surely you can sell a player on a project still, right? You think that still can happen? You can sell a player on a project. Arteta will bring them in, show them, tell them what they want them to do, and the player can actually get sold on the project. Is that me being too optimistic, Rohan?
Maybe. I don't think it's even going there. I'm not saying that it's outside the realms of possibility and Arsenal stand no chance. If that was the case, then we wouldn't be able to sign the players that we have done, and going forward also, there are also a lot of other clubs that sign big players. But another factor that will come into play is what sort of players we sell or keep. That is the intent that we're going to show, right? If we show them with our intent that we can keep someone like an Aubameyang in the team and retain that sort of talent, that should give a signal of intent to players coming in. But if we turn it into a selling team and we start going on this whole rampage there, that's just going to indicate to people that the current players don't want to stay. Why should the new players come in?
And let's remember what our last signal of intent was and who that was. Can anyone tell me who that was? 2 or 3 years ago, our last signal of intent was keeping Mesut Ozil on the books. Tony, before I go to Stan, Tony, can you sell the player on the project?
I think you can.
Would Partey be excited to come to Arsenal based on retaining, say, Aubameyang and Arteta telling him the other targets that we're looking at?
I think you can point to the form because we've been third since the first of the year since Arteta's came in, and say we're going to sign this player or keep this player and help as well.
We're grasping to the tiniest of straws. Is it the form table since Arteta came in, Stan?
Here's the thing. Usually, when you're selling a player on a building project, it's because you've got a bit of cash knocking about. Someone's come in. You're a team that's been underachieving. Someone's come in with some like cash, and you can entice a player because you can write them a big check. Well, I don't think that we're kind of in that sort of area at the moment, because we're talking to players about reducing the contracts that they're already on. So I think it's going to be a tough sell, and that's why I think, we've talked about players before, players like Evan and Dicker and Odison, Edouard. That's kind of the area where I think that Arsenal should be looking to get players. Those players that are at that kind of a level that do have a lot of potential. Because I just really think that, I keep seeing people tweeting, would you be happy with these three? And it's Kai Havertz, Thomas Partey and Upamecano. And I just don't see where we've got the money to buy them, unless we're going to get them all on HP, like we did with Nicolas Pepe. And even if we manage to get the transfers, the transfer money sorted, then we've got to negotiate personal terms, and we look like that we're tightening our belts. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. The other thing is, as we mentioned already, is Lacazette, maybe a make weight in the transfer, Rohan.
Yeah,
so.
and I don't think that I'll be too unhappy about it. My thoughts on that. I think we're too top heavy. The consideration is that we keep Aubameyang in that case. But if that's the case, then I don't mind selling Lacazette. He's been poorly out of form, and it's not that I don't like Lacazette. Actually, I did rate him, and I still do rate him. So it in a perfect world, I'd like to keep them both. But knowing where we are as a club, we won't have that sort of money. So one big signing, if we want to do, then we'll have to sell Lacazette, and then maybe, in fact, we might just get some money back out of that deal. If not, it's a par deal for Partey, and then we have to spill the cash for an Upamecano or someone. But yeah, I agree again with what Stan's saying, that if these people who are so optimistic are saying that we're going to sign all of these players, and if they assume that we aren't going to sell players, and without knowing our current situation, financial situation, then they know something about Arsenal that I don't. I didn't know if Mohammed bin Salman was taking over Arsenal. That piece of news I didn't get. So maybe they've got.
And if moving Lacazette on, that will definitely allow Aubameyang to play through the middle and open things up for Martinelli and even Nketiah. So that if we can see it, the club can see it, Arteta can see it. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of moving parts, and the big part of it is this coronavirus and how that's going to wreak havoc economically across the world and across football as well. But that'll bring us nicely on to our next section, which is going to be the criteria based, if the season will end due to the coronavirus, the criteria points based. We heard a number of permutations go around on this, and one of them, I think, is the coefficient rankings, Tony. It will actually see Arsenal finish 4th place.
Before we go into this, could you guys actually explain to me about what coefficient rankings are? Because I'm not really aware of how that works or what it is, and I'm not sure if all of our listeners are as well.
Yeah. So I can take it if you don't want to, Tony.
You can take it.
All right. So it's coefficient rankings. It's 5 years rolling. So for the last 5 years, you take all of the European results into account, and it's got a coefficient ranking for all of the results. Now, we look back in the last few years, we got to a final of the Europa League. We got to the semi-final. And even, dare I say it, 5 years ago, we were in the Champions League playing teams. So you actually get more points the further you get through the knockout stage of the Champions League as well. So for that 1 year, Tottenham
taking compared to other teams or something like that. It's like taking an average, is it?
It's taking a rolling average over the 5 years of your European exploits. And we've actually done better than Chelsea, say, for instance, over those last 5 years. Rohan, you can get in now. You're
Yeah.
nodding
So
there,
so essentially, what happens is that every time you're in the European Cup competitions,
Competition.
and you go ahead to the knockout stage, you get a certain amount of points, and each round that you clear, you accumulate more points. And if you see over the past 5 years, we have basically been in the Champions League, I think 3 years, and 2 years in the Europa League. This was again one more year, but this year I don't think will be counted because it didn't finish. And in the 5 years, we were in the quarterfinals, easy to remember, Champions League, no, round of 16, sorry, round of 16 thrice. And that gives us a certain number of points, but we did clear the group stage each time. And then we were in the semi-final once and the final once. So that gives us a good coefficient ranking. And with Man City up top, Liverpool at second, because they obviously won it and they were in the final the year before. And Manchester United, I think, is at third, and then that puts Arsenal at fourth.
Yeah,
so this is where we're at.
Yeah.
And that's also because some of these other teams, your Chelsea and your Tottenham had dropped out either at the group stage, or they weren't in the Champions League, or they were in the Champions League but they didn't go as far. Of course, Chelsea did win the Europa League last season. So, but this is essentially what it is. It's a rolling 5-year average, and we were in Europe each time. Even though we were in the Europa League, we did do well there, and this year wasn't counted. So yeah.
So you see, Stan, we really are a Champions League team. We pay the wages. We do everything. We're really a Champions League team.
So are you saying then that after everything that's happened with the end of the season, that you're saying that there is a possibility that next season could start and we could be magically reinstated into the Champions League at the expense of, say, those noisy gits that live across the road?
Yeah, Tottenham or Chelsea. Because Tottenham will be fifth, and Tottenham will be fifth under the coefficient, and Chelsea would be sixth.
I would definitely have a large slice of that. Thank you very much. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea's in sixth on 83 points, and then it drops off to Wolves on 12 points. It really hinders those teams who have just sort of come on strong in the last year or so, right, Rohan?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of looking at things, and of course, whoever is not up there will say that it's unfair. I myself don't see. I myself don't think that it's the most fair way.
It's not fair.
Nowhere are we the top.
We should have this every year.
Nowhere are we the fourth best team there to be up there, especially with some of the other teams, how they've done this season. But we'll have some of that. So yeah. And I think out of that, there's also to take into consideration that if Man City still have that ban for next season, so they'll be out, and then maybe Tottenham come in. So
of course,
there's a lot of things going on there.
Rohan, of course, a lot like Liverpool, we won't like it, but we'll take it, right? Liverpool won't like winning the league the way they're probably going to win the league, but they'll take it with that big asterisk, as you said in previous podcasts.
Yeah, I'll be happy to make a certificate for myself for that.
Could you imagine?
Stan is quite.
Oh, I'm chuffed to bits, but could you imagine if that actually played out? And not only did we get reinstated into the Champions League, and let's say Man City couldn't go in, we actually won it. This weird scenario played out, and we actually went ahead and won it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have even been anywhere near it.
This Corona is really getting to us now.
Yeah, that's the coefficient rankings. That is the coefficient rankings. There is another criteria that we can look at as well. The coefficient rankings, of course, like we just said, puts us in fourth place, puts Tottenham in fifth place, and puts Chelsea in sixth. So we'll have some of that coefficient rankings, rolling 5-year system of European results weighted over 5 years. The other situation is points based. Rohan, do you want to talk about that, or?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the other point that was presented is that they'll take into account what the number of games that have been played till now and the points and the positions that teams are in now. And of course, I think we're in 9th or something like that. And so we don't make it into any European competition. But I think that is even more unfair than the coefficient, because all teams have not played each other, and some teams might have had an easier run, a more difficult run. Like Tony said, that we were a team on the rise. So to end the season now, I don't think that's going to happen. That would be severely unfair. So I think that this is the worst of the lot, and don't want anything to do with that one.
No, you can keep that.
So this points-based one is, we actually played, I think, 28 games, right, Rohan?
Yeah.
And we had 41 points. So you take 41 points, divide that by 28, and you get 1.43. Here's the kicker now. Tottenham, I think, were 1 point ahead of us, but they played one game more. So their points-based rating is 2 digits less than ours. So we're 1.43 and they're 1.41, and they miss out on the last Europa League spot as a consequence of playing that extra game.
It gives us 8th.
Right, Stan?
Well, now that you kind of like,
so we're going to be 7th place.
Now that you've laid it all out to me, and I've had a chance to mull it all over and give it some deep thought, I'm still behind coefficient rankings. I love that.
You're still going on the coefficient rankings. I think that's the better way to choose the European placings, right, Rohan? Because it is European based. It's competition based in Europe.
Exactly.
So, but we'll see what happens. It's all hearsay, and this is if the season will end as it is right now.
Exactly. So this is of course, now aren't we happy that we didn't play that one Man City game because of the storm that was going on? Otherwise, we would have probably been a couple of spots lower. But yeah, this for me is unfair, because some teams have had an easier run, a more difficult run, etc., etc. So don't want any of that. But there is also a third option which is on the table, right, Tony? That is the playoff. So teams play like a single match against each other, do or die cup competition sort of a situation, and whoever wins goes through, which is going to be the absolute best way to start the season, or restart the season, or restart football as such, that the first game that you get after such a long drought is that there's knockout matches happening. Just imagine that. People are going to have heart attacks. Then people will have to go for heart attacks to the hospital instead of COVID.
And of course, we jest about that. But yeah, that's how the season-ending criteria will work out. And we're getting closer and closer to that point where we have to consider that the season may actually end without any more games being played, Stan.
Hope so.
So my prophetic tweet about that West Ham game, that was probably the last game we may have played for the 2019-2020 season ever. Can you remember how bad that game was?
It seems so far away now, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was a pretty dour game, right, Rohan?
Yeah.
We actually got the benefit of a VAR decision as well on that day for the goal, which took 12 minutes.
Things were turning to our favor. We had started getting a few runs on, through wins on the board,
on the board.
We
were third. We were third in the table in terms of form, right, Tony?
Yep.
We're going to cling to anything. If it means we're going to get Thomas Partey and we're going to get the coefficient rankings, we'll have some of that. Okay, Stan?
Yep, plenty.
Anyway, that's the situation. Nobody's saying the season has ended or is going to end yet, but it's getting very, very close to where how would you finish the season, Rohan, and how would you start next season?
I mean, it's going to be.
And that's too big of a subject.
I don't know if that was a rhetorical question. I'm with Stan. Let's get the coefficient.
Yeah, basically, we didn't want to go into another
Exactly.
30-minute segment just on that.
The best scenario is that we
All
void
right.
the season. The best scenario is that we void the season. Liverpool doesn't become champions. Everybody starts next season as if it was the beginning of this season, where you were, but the coefficient things kicked in the Champions League.
Yeah. Okay, so let's rumble on here. I think this is going to take a good 20 minutes here. Maybe.
15 minutes.
Let me go and get a quick drink. I'll be right back.
We'll get a quick drink. Get a stiff one. Get a stiff drink for us. All right, Rohan, we'll start off with this. Obviously, it's not good that this news is leaking like a faucet out of the club. And for a club like Arsenal, who's always conducted things in the right manner, it's become a little bit more disturbing in the last few years where you hear things. You heard about Koscielny. All of these things were linked, not in the best way, or leaked to the press, not in the best way. And now we have a situation where we heard 3 players didn't actually like the situation of whatever you want to call it, furloughing your wages, wage cut, a wage deferral. And there's more intelligent people than me on this podcast that can tell you about deferrals and wage cuts, and we might get into that with Tony. But it's not good news, Rohan, right? This news that's coming out.
It affects the morale and the solidarity of the club, and these things should not come out. There are things that we want to know, and there are things that we shouldn't know. And this was one of the things that should have been handled internally, and just wasn't. So, there's a mole in the club.
Yeah. Now here's a couple of questions I'm going to throw out. I'll stay with you, Rohan, while Stan pours his beer there, or a stiff drink. Do you think that this is a meditated act in singling out Mesut Ozil to dislodge him from the club in a concerted effort?
It seems like it, right? Because there are 3 guys who haven't taken it. Apparently, Mesut Ozil being one of the guys, but it's only Ozil's name which has come out in the fore, and everybody is after him. And we go into whether that decision itself is something to be condoned or condemned, or it's what we feel about that decision of Ozil itself. But the fact that it has come out is to say that that it seems from the club side that there's something happening behind the door, that that they're concocting something against Ozil. Yeah. If these paper talks are to be believed, then the Arsenal players are also not happy with the treatment that Ozil is getting from the club, or rather from all around, with his decision that he's taken, and he's taken that as an individual, and people should respect that.
Yeah, let's go to Tony next and get a definition of what Ozil is wanting. So rather than a wage cut, Tony, he wants to take a deferral, right? What does that actually mean?
It just means that he's getting paid later, like 12 months from now. Right now, he will be making, say, 70% of his wages, but at the end of a time, he'll get that 30% back.
So it's not to be too harsh on Ozil about this, but it's basically a savings fund for him, where a pension fund, where a certain amount of that money will be set away for him for his mini retirement in a year or so from now, right?
Yeah, he's getting his not right now.
Yeah. Okay. And so Mesut Ozil is a mature and experienced player, and has to be pointed out as well that the first personality to do this was Mikel Arteta, Rohan. Mikel Arteta was the first one who took a pay cut, and the backroom and the boardroom have taken over a 30% pay cut. And we're quite proud of the club in leading the way in doing this, because we're going to see other clubs in the Premier League have to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, and this would have been a great message from the club, great for the image of the club that we're the first ones to take this decision and everybody has taken it unanimously, etc., etc. A very good story. But from my perspective, there's a legality of things and there's a morality of things, right? Now, in terms of it just being legally, Mesut Ozil is not obliged to take a wage cut. Why
No.
should he take the wage cut? It's Stan Kroenke's business. This money is being used to pay Stan Kroenke's staff. This is not Mesut Ozil's stuff. Mesut Ozil is himself an employee of Arsenal Football Club. He is under no obligation legally to take a wage cut. That's one.
Yeah.
Going into the morality of things, first of all, Mesut Ozil hasn't said that he is not going to take the wage cut, but he said that, I want to defer it till the time I see what is happening with the whole situation. And he has reason for not trusting Stan Kroenke. There are a lot of moving parts that we as fans don't know about. What we do know about is that this board can't be trusted completely. So you can't blame Mesut Ozil for not trusting them. Also, what we have to remember is the same board and this same club wanted to push him out the door not very long ago. They were with Emery and they wanted to push him out the door. So all in all, why should he be under any obligation? They're saying that you should take a 12.5% cut. A charity or a donation cannot be demanded. It can, you do it out of the goodness of your heart. So even if he did 5% or he did 20%, that was, anything more than zero is a contribution for him, and he shouldn't be slated for that. So for me, legally he's not obliged to pay anything. Morally also, I don't think that there's anything wrong. He does enough charity outside of it. He's not supposed to pay Arsenal employees because he himself is an employee there.
Sure. Okay, Stan. Stan Kroenke's put some money in as well. The coach has taken a pay cut. The boardroom's taken a pay cut. The players have decided to do this. It's not really a great look for Mesut Ozil, but I also feel like he's being exposed as well in this situation. So I really am undecided. I don't know which way to go, and what do you think, Stan? It's difficult.
Well, putting my personal feelings aside of Mesut Ozil, of what I think of him as a football player and his position within the football team, I'll try and be very, and if you don't know what they are, by the way, then just go back a couple of episodes to where we were putting together our worst ever Arsenal team, and I laid it all out there. So if you want to know what my feelings are and you don't know, go back and you'll see it all there. But
he didn't make the worst 11, just so everyone knows. He didn't make the worst 11.
I wanted him to be the captain, but we'll just leave that there. But looking at this situation, the one thing that I don't quite understand is that the proposed cuts that that Arsenal have put forward, this 12.5%, is that money to be directly put into the NHS, or is it going to be put into pay the wages of those people behind the scenes that are non-playing staff, or is this an exercise to bring players' wages more in line to what the hierarchy feel is where we are as a team at the moment? And what I mean by that is not paying, for example, we've heard it said by Josh Kroenke himself, paying Championship League wages for a non-Champion League club, which is a polite way of probably saying a mid-table team. That's the one thing that I'm not sure about this deduction. What is the aim of it? Because if it's
it is to pay the non-playing staff, and the coefficient says we are a Champions League team.
So if this pay reduction is to pay for the non-playing staff, then why is it so intrinsically linked to results on the pitch? You know, if we qualify for this, you'll get that amount back. If you qualify for that, you'll get that amount back. And this is something that, from the articles that I've read, and I've not looked extensively, it's not really been clear to me. And I would go back to, you know, in the past, not so long ago, when when one of the Cronkies has come out to speak about Arsenal, it's usually Josh, and he did mention, you know, on more than one occasion, he's sort of shoehorned it in there that, you know, we're kind of living out of our means, and you know, we're supposed to be a football club that is a self-sustaining model. So it's obvious to me that the hierarchy think that we are not adhering to that, and that needs to be addressed. So I'm under the feeling that this pay reduction, it's come by way of convenience of the pandemic. And what I mean by that is they were already thinking about ways how to save their outgoings, because I'm sure that emails have went around recently. I've heard it on Arseblog where departments have, you know, people have left departments have shrunk, people have already been let go. There's been a reorganization of departments, which have mean certain things have changed and resources have been saved. So it looks like that a cost-cutting exercise has been happening. So I'm very dubious of the timing of it all, and I just think that because of the pandemic and everybody's now, you know, the subject on everybody's, you know, the tip of everybody's tongue is tightening belt, saving money. It's all kind of played in together. I don't know if I'm being cynical, but what I'm trying to say is, if that is the case, if it is because, you know, they feel that we're living out of our means, I'd have to agree with them, because we are. You know, we can't pay a player 350 grand a week for where we are as a team. You know, and I was just looking at the stats earlier. You know, I was looking at the stats earlier. Since Mesut Ozil signed his contract, he's had 44 appearances, made 6 assists, and I think it's 1 goal, which isn't enough. But I don't blame Mesut Ozil for getting paid £350,000 a week. I think it's wrong. But if I'm going to point my finger, then I point my finger at the people that made that contract. So I just wanted to put that in there, that no matter what I feel about this subject and what I feel about Mesut Ozil, I've never blamed him for accepting the contract. He got offered that. That was bad management.
And who would not take that money? Who would not take that money, Tony? You know?
Exactly. But the other side of the coin is, what I'm hearing is that when all of these talks started about, you know, with the players about taking this reduction, as I understand it, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I can't tell you which one it was on, but they just gave the indication that a lot of the players, especially some of the younger players, wanted to maybe speak up, felt a little bit pressured into it. I know that their financial representatives or agents weren't allowed in on those meetings. It was all done separately with the players. And as I understand it, some of these agents have kind of expressed a feeling that, well, hold on a minute, if you're going to talk to my client about his finances, that's what I'm being paid for. I should be in on those meetings. And it kind of worries me that if you have players that are coming up to have contracts negotiations, what kind of advice are they going to be getting from those agents? Will they be saying to them, you know, yeah, Saka, you know, you've got a good future here at Arsenal, I've got you a good deal? Or would they be saying, like, I'm not sure they've got your best interests at heart? I mean, when we had the, you know, they didn't even let me in the conversation with you about this 12.5% reduction. I can get you a deal over here at this place. I'm just speculating here at a wider picture of conversations that could be going on. So with Mesut Ozil not accepting it, he has his reasons. And if this was a job where you worked in an office and you're all selling advertising and you're all working in a cubicle and the management comes down with something like this, it's an individual decision because it's more of an individual job. But I would like to think that at a football club, if something like this is going to go down, I would have liked to have seen the teams go one way or the other, but as a team. Not some are, some ain't, some are still thinking about it. If it meant a delay on telling us, then I would have liked to have thought that we would see the team make a united decision. Because it's a team, it is a team, right? And we try to sort of foster this image that it's a family. It's not just individual contractors that are working at Arsenal. So I would have liked to have seen that happen. The one thing that I'm going to say in defense of Mesut Ozil is that I find it highly curious that when this story came out, he's the only name that's been mentioned. You know, I do find that curious.
Correct.
I don't know what the reasons are. I've not heard who these other two are. And for me, that tells me that I think that this has definitely been leaked from somewhere within the club. And the reason I say that is, if you remember when Unai Emery first took hold of the team, he froze Ozil out for a while, didn't he? He started freezing him out. Even when he came back from that injury, we knew that he was fit. Ozil was posting pictures saying, look at me, I'm training. And he wasn't being selected even for the bench. And when Emery was asked about it, he alluded that he had the backing of the club. So he basically said that Mesut Ozil was being frozen out of Arsenal, and this was a unanimous decision by the club. So there was
December,
a point.
December 2018.
So there was a point when they were trying to ease him and freeze him and somehow get him off of the wage and get him out of the club. And I don't think that attitude has changed. Mesut Ozil's hardly done anything on the pitch to make the hierarchy think that the money is still being well invested. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. And I think that this leak is another move to unsettle him, to try and get him out. And it's curious that the leak has come very, very soon after the article by his agent, Dr. Irgut, who was saying, you know, Ozil's not going anywhere. He's going to see his contract out. Basically, you know, you got to like it and lump it.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. The club was trying to implement those cost savings even last season before the coronavirus came along. So this club has been trying to reduce its overheads because we are competing in the Europa. We're competing in the Europa League, but we're on Champions League wages. Rohan.
Yeah, we are on Champions League wages, and whose fault is that? That's not Mesut Ozil's fault. That is the board's
previous
fault.
regime again.
Yeah, and that needs to be resolved. You know, but again, now, like Stan had said, you know, this seems to be linked with our on-field performances, right? If we make the Champions League, then we get back the 12.5%. If we make the Europa League, we get an additional 7.5%. And if by some way we end up winning the Champions League, you know, you get an extra 100 grand per person. So if it's linked to our on-field operations and our on-field success, then this isn't really 100% related to paying the staff or our COVID situation that we are in. That's one. And if this is to be believed, that, you know, we depend on Champions League money and that's what is going to, you know, pay for it, especially with the conversation that we've had right now, which is with the coefficient. Now, Mesut Ozil looks like a very smart guy who's saying that, wait, let's see if we make it through the Champions League next season. Then why do any of us need to take any sort of wage cut? Because you're going to give me back that money anyway. So he's in fact right in saying that in that way, that you don't need to make a wage cut because you were talking about us making Champions League next season. Instead, we're going to make the Champions League right now. You know, so again, you know, I think there was a hurry from the club to be the first, you know, to say that, you know, Arsenal is so good, Arsenal has done this, and Arsenal is the first one. You know, that's either we were trying to make good PR for ourselves or just trying to make it as difficult for Mesut Ozil as possible. And it seems to be like it's the latter one, right? Because his name is the only one that has come out.
And that's very disturbing because now we have a trend of over 2 years where we're trying to play this PR. The club is maybe having a concerted effort of PR wars versus Mesut Ozil. And his PR machine is quite impressive as well. He does have a lot of fans that will follow him wherever he goes. Not necessarily Arsenal fans, but yeah, we have. This seems to be a little bit disconcerting, Rohan.
No, it is. It is. But I'm trying to now look at this as just an ordinary person who would take that money if was offered to me.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it, and I'm no way justifying that Ozil deserves that sort of money. It's not about Ozil as a player here, right? Because if it was Ozil as a player, then we'd all agree that he doesn't deserve that money. But it's about a person, any person, and their right to the money that they have earned. At least the contract that they have signed up to.
Yeah, to have some way to some say about what's going to happen with their money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the thing, I just say, here's the thing, though, right? If this pay reduction is dependent on what happens next season, it's irrespective whether this season starts, is voided, or whatever. The reductions come into place at the end of next season if we qualify for either the Champions League or the Europa League. So the conversation about Mesut Ozil could actually be moot in the fact that come the summer, he might not even be an Arsenal player. He could be sold. Exactly. Maybe he'd be out on loan, like Sanchez is at Man United. He may not even be on the books. So, in the time that this all comes into play and players are actually going to have to give money back or maybe not, the team could be turned over quite substantially because 2 windows. Between now and then, there's 2 transfer windows, right? And a lot can happen in between that time. The conversation really, for me, with these pay reductions is how it's framed to players that are coming in those 2 transfer windows. And I don't know if I said this before on this podcast. Are you going to bring somebody in and say to them, we want you to come to Arsenal, but this is the money that we're going to give you. If you only reach the Europa League, we're going to claw back 7.5%. If we don't reach the Champions League, we're going to claw back 12.5%. Or do you say, we want you to come to play at Arsenal, this is your salary, and should we make qualification for the Europa League, you will receive an extra 7.5%. Should we make the Champions League, you will make an extra 12.5% as a bonus. So that's where you've got to be a little bit smart, because then you're going to have to readjust the starting salary to incorporate that. But the other thing as well with Mesut Ozil is, you're looking at the amount, and Rohan is right. You're looking at someone's personal wages, yeah. But it's a lot different if you've got £10 in your pocket and someone comes up to you and asks if they can lend £7 because you're left with 3. And Mesut Ozil earns over 18 million over 18 million pounds a year, and his reduction if he was affected by that, he would lose just under 3 million. So he's not going to be short of a few quid. And I know that a lot of people say that he already does a lot for charity, and he does, and I've seen it written about. And it's commendable. But my argument to that would be that I know that he does these things, but this is about something that's very, very close to home. And if the money is being used for non-playing staff, then you've got to take that into consideration, right? You've got to take that. Because it's very close to home. You know what I mean? You can't just say, well, them in the canteen and them in the laundry don't matter because I'm supplying hospital beds. You've still got to work with these people. You still got to be around these people.
Yeah, we've all seen the documentaries on Netflix. Let's say Sunderland is one that springs to mind, and they're a close knit. Everyone that works in these clubs, the backroom staff, all of the people, the non-playing staff, they're all part of the family, and they all know each other's names on a first name basis. So I'm sure the players have taken that into account. It just disturbs me that it seemed to be, Tony, that the club and players had agreed to this. We're all happy that Arsenal are doing this, and then this news comes to light, like a leak out of the blue, like your roof was leaking that you didn't know about, and you have this bad news about the club, and you got a bad taste in your mouth now.
Yeah, well, the team was split. 15 of the players voted against it to start off with. Then the executives took a 30% cut. Then the coaching staff took their cut. And the players decided, okay, we'll go ahead and agree to wage cuts.
And then the other part about this story that is disturbing to me is the apparent that the younger players had seemed like they were being pressurized into doing this, Rohan, and that's also disturbing to me.
Yeah, of course. Younger players who are just starting their careers, they would feel that it's unfair for them that someone like, an Aubameyang or Mesut Ozil has to face, in theory, the same percentage of fine, which will, like Stan said, create a much smaller dent in their pocket compared to these guys. So of course they might have, but they don't have the stature as well, right? These guys are up and coming players, and they sometimes feel like they are lucky, which they are, to play for Arsenal Football Club. But there was a brilliant point by Stan that this might make them think, where is the future of where is my future here? Because the club can arm twist me now, and when I become a player of stature, I'm going to remember this and I'm going to hold you at ransom. If I'm not happy about it and I'm not given my individual choice, then I'm going to make you pay later. The agents, we shouldn't spite them right now because they play a big role in the modern game, right? Whether we like it or not.
They always have the last laugh, and those who laugh last laugh loudest, right?
Exactly.
Stan, I want to delve into that a little bit. What kind of, looking at this thing in a microcosm, in isolation, what say about our club? What does it say about our club moving forward? Are we a well-run club?
Sorry, you're freezing a little bit there. I didn't catch your question.
Right there. Yeah. Looking at this in isolation and the way this has been handled, it looked like we were doing the right thing from the start. The players were in agreement with the club through Hector Bellerin, right, Rohan?
Yeah.
And everything looked Humpty-Dory, or whatever you call it, all good. And then we have this leak. And it's not a good look for the club. And what does that show us in the general operation of the direction of the club going forward?
Well, there's 2 points as well that we need to remember, is that when these conversations first started up between Arsenal's hierarchy and the players, and as you say, Hector Bellerin is like the PFA go-between, the PFA advised the players to take deferral only. So initially, you've got to remember, it's like if you're part of a union and you're thinking, okay, what do I do in this situation? Let's see what the union has to say. They were told not to go for the pay cuts, to go for deferrals only. So that was the initial advice that they were given. So I had all of the squad turned around and says, no, we'll just go for deferral. That's the advice that they've been given. And they're young men as well, The other thing I'd like to say is that Mesut Ozil, he's the highest paid player in the Premiership, if not the second. So when we were talking about, some of the younger players, what kind of an example does it set if you're maybe a younger player in the squad, or even a player who's earning the average wage at another team, and you're watching everything play out and you're thinking to yourself, well, Mesut Ozil don't want to pay it and he's earning the most money in the league, then why should I? That's a thought that may go through some people's minds. So even though I feel Mesut Ozil probably might feel a little bit hard done by because of his other charity work, I don't know if that's the case, but I just think that he should have sucked it up a little bit and made the example, because of as I say, he's the most highest paid player in the league, I believe, after Sanchez, and Sanchez is playing abroad. It sets a tone all the way down. I'm not going to crucify him for it, as much as I dislike him as a player. But as I said, it would have been nice if there was a 100% unity from the team, and the team had said, we're all doing this, or we're all not doing it. But yeah, it does leave a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth to hear stories that the younger players may feel that they were kind of press ganged into it. But this is a story that has a lot of layers to it, and all we're doing here is speculating on what we've seen. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
that's exactly the point, Stan. That's exactly the point I was going to say. On my notes here, my question is it too early to discuss this? We're bringing this to the fore because it is a news item. Rohan, it may be too early to even talk about this. As Stan said, there could be more things coming out in the near future.
I agree with that. We don't know whether the coefficient will go into play, whether we'll make the Champions League next season or not, how long this whole thing is going to last, whether we're going to have football in June or July or September or, whenever, there's so many moving parts to this, whether players are going to be there in the summer or not, and we've got to remember, the statements that have come out is that Ozil has not said that I'm against taking it. He said that I'm not even against saying that I'll give more than 12.5%. I just want to assess the situation. I want to see where the situation heads, and then I want to make a decision. And you can't slate him for that, So that's essentially, yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
I said that was a deferral, not a wage cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to take a deferral at the moment, but from what I had read, he'd said that he would be open to the wage cut as well, not receiving his 100%, but he wanted to see what the whole effect was. And I do understand, what Stan has said. Of course, it would be great that the club takes a unified stand, and they should, right? But at the end of it, it is not Mesut Ozil's job to pay for the cleaning lady or for the person in the in the restaurant, etc., etc. It is Stan Kroenke's job. So you can't blame Mesut Ozil for this in theory, right? Of course, there is a morality of things. These people get served by them, and they of course have earned more than enough to be able to give it. But again, then when you start comparing by the paycheck that you get, then you start saying that, then Barcelona has now said that the next year, the naming rights of Nou Camp, all the proceeds will go to charity. Then why isn't everyone else doing it? Then that sets a standard, right? You can't set a standard for charity. We may earn differently, we may give contribution differently, but each contribution is counted in the same way. It doesn't matter whether we give £50 or £500, as long as we do contribute something, right?
Yeah, it's a deed, it's a moral deed, and moral humanity deed. Dan, I know we can move on to the next segment, but as a whole,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ray. Just one thing that popped into my mind as well as we were discussing this is that the things that don't add up, the two things that don't add up for me either is, on the one hand, you've got the owners of the club putting forward a 12.5, a paid discount, and we're talking about helping non-playing staff. But then they're also saying that they're going to be putting money into the club, and they've said millions into the club to cover everything. And for me, the two gestures just don't match up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put billions into the club, then why do they need to take a pay cut? Do you see what I'm, Which really makes me think that the pay cut thing isn't just tied to the pandemic, that this is a readjustment.
This is financial re-engineering.
A readjustment, which legally, I don't know how that would stand, right? Because each player is on a contract to get X amount of pounds, X amount of bonuses or whatever for a set period of time. So, I mean, I'm not a legal person. I don't know all about this stuff. But on the one hand, you're being told you need to take a 12-point the discount. But then the other side, the management is saying, we're going to put money in to cover stuff. Yeah. So it just doesn't match. Do you know what I mean? If you're putting the money in, then that money should go to cover the non-playing staff. Ergo, the players don't need to take a discount. It's business as usual.
Exactly,
Still got to have
Stan.
revenue.
And it's wonderful that we're all speaking the same. We're all on the same wavelength
Have
because
I missed something? Did I miss something? Am I
no,
behind something?
you've just said the same thing again that I was going to bring forward a little bit. I'm looking back over the last 20 years. I'm like every other Arsenal fan. I want to see signs that we're going to get back to the glory days. And yeah, we're talking about a wage deferral, but this is another sign about how the club can be run. You can see signs of how a club is run in every aspect of its business, and I'm not seeing good signs here in terms of how this was handled. We want to, as every fan, all of us here, we want to see Arsenal winning the Premier League at some point in the near future, and we want to see green shoots of growth here, Rohan. We want to see things happening. We know that Arteta is a bright light. We have young players, but young players are impressionable as well, and players in general are impressionable. They cottoned on to Unai Emery pretty quickly, and down tools. Uh, they didn't play for Unai Emery after a season. So what I'm saying is, are we seeing our club run in the best way through this crisis in this manner?
And Mesut Ozil, he's asked the question that every player should be asking, and the question I understand that he's asked is, I don't mind doing this, but you need to clarify what my money is going towards.
Yes, yeah.
And especially if you're one of those players and you're hearing that you're going to be taking a pay cut, but that hierarchy are going to be putting in money to prop up the club, then that would be my question. Well, hold on a minute. Where's my money actually going to? What is it that I'm going to support?
Yeah, Stan, it's just like the regular person going to the store and they're asked to donate to the kids in Africa. You want to know that your money that you're giving today will go in its entirety to the continent of Africa and help those people and not get siphoned off somewhere else. Rohan?
Yeah, right. First question, the legality of it and how in contractual terms, how they're going to manage it. Of course, they can amend the contracts. They've been signed up to contracts, but they can amend those contracts and they can change it and they can, introduce going forward, whatever new arrangement that they want to. And this arrangement, I suppose, was going to come in from next month. So next month onwards, they take the pay cut, and then we see how it goes. But I actually read the club statement on it. It said that it's going to come into effect next month, but there was an indication, at least I felt there was hope that the season would come back. That was the underlying tone from what I had read from the club statement. Now, whether that plays or not is something that is yet to be seen. Whether we make the Champions League or not is yet to be seen. So I think that the more I talk about it, the more I feel that Mesut Ozil is the only reasonable one here who's saying that, wait a minute, let's see where this is going.
The more
really,
we're talking about it, that's the yeah.
Yeah, because
I can't believe I'm actually sticking up for Mesut Ozil on it.
It's just for his individual right? Like, I may not like you, but I will always defend your right to say it, right? So it's in the same way that we all think as individuals, and he's asking the question, and because he doesn't care. And the broader point that you're asking, Ray, is how is our club being run? And I think it's being run very poorly, because this whole issue has been created not by Mesut Ozil, it's been created by the club.
Yeah.
Because the club has been dilly-dallying on its position. Sometimes they're like, I'm going to back the manager, Mesut Ozil, you're out. Then fans go against, these players down tools. Then Emery, you're out. Mesut Ozil, you're back in. We're going to give you a big contract. And then you don't play. I'm going to try to freeze you out. With Mustafi also, you see that there's always a conversation, he's frozen out, he has no future. Then there's a video of him on Arsenal.com, that how difficult it's been sort of trying to win the fans back. So the message is unclear, and whoever is running this is not running this in an efficient manner. There should be one consistent message. You're out, you're out. You're in. But we're not doing that. We're dilly-dallying, and that increases uncertainty, and that increases, animosity amongst people.
You see, there's no
since this story's come out, we've not actually, unless I missed it, we've not heard from Mesut Ozil. And we do know, as Ray mentioned earlier, his PR machine is second to none. They're like a well-oiled machine. So it wouldn't surprise me if very soon, and I'm surprised we didn't hear something sooner from Mesut Ozil's camp, because he has been called out, hasn't he? I mean, in the UK, I saw the clip about Piers Morgan, yeah? And Piers Morgan, he doesn't pull his punches. So I'm very surprised that Mesut Ozil hasn't had some kind of reaction yet, but I think there will be, because if you remember when he got froze out by Emery, there was a famous picture of him in training with the cheesy smile, just after the press conference. So I don't think that we've heard the last of this yet, and I suspect we're going to hear from Ozil very soon.
Mesut Ozil's PR machine is the player that Mesut Ozil should be,
Yeah. Pumped, right? Strong. Listen, there's no doubt that the previous regime left our club in a bad way, tying us up to contracts. We lost players. We've just been poorly run the last 3 years. We've lost players on frees that we shouldn't have. We should have collected that money, and we need to tie players down. The Raul and Vinay have said that they will do that. The proof will be in the eating of that pie. But we're all fans here, and we're all looking for the club to move forward. And I want to see those shoots more than Arteta. I want to see, and it seems like the club is trying to push incentives into the player rather than the players having those will inside of their own body to win games. So they're trying to engineer, like Stan said, engineer the salary caps, the salary structure, so the club will perform better on the field. It should come from here within the players' body itself to bring the club forward. But I like the way everything is kind of flowed tonight, and we're going to finish with the next section here. And before I do that, shout out to Chawhat. He doesn't see a way how the Premier League can be resumed, and I think we're getting to that point we just talked about. First part of the show was how some experienced players that should know better broke the lockdown rules, and that's not a good look. We talked about Mesut Ozil and the wage deferral, and the club has not looked very good in that situation. You can look at it from both sides of Ozil, whether you're an Ozil fan or not, but you can see that both sides have not performed very well in there. And what was the other thing we talked about? The coefficient of how, if the season does end, such as Shawhat thinks, what's going to happen there. But let's finish off with the latest thing is the Newcastle takeover. And this shouldn't take too long, and then we can get out of here. So it seems like the league is not against the Newcastle takeover. Rohan?
Yeah, and the people, it seems like it's getting close. This COVID situation, if it's worked out in somebody's favor, then it seems to be Newcastle, because Mike Ashley seems to be finally selling it. I think it was maybe a season and a half ago, or maybe it was last season, when he was about to sell it, and there was a lot of conversation, but it did not end up getting sold.
Yeah.
But now the talks seem pretty real that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he's known, is taking over Newcastle, and there's a lot of talk that it's going to be run in the Man City way, and Newcastle are going to rise as a superpower, as Man City did.
Phoenix from the Flames. Yeah,
so
Phoenix from the Flames, Stan. And if we're a mid-table team now, we're going to be pushed down maybe a little bit unless we start getting our act together.
Well, I've got to tell you, with this whole Newcastle takeover thing, I'm secretly excited about it because you may remember I've got family ties with Newcastle.
Yes.
My great-grandfather.
Yes.
I got to put it out there again. My great-grandfather is still currently Newcastle United's most decorated football player post Second World War. No, post First World War. Excuse me, First World War, even further.
Yeah,
back.
and you better keep talking about that because that could be eclipsed in the next 3 to 5 years.
So I'm really, yeah, exactly. When Mbappe becomes their top scorer, yeah. Because I'm particularly excited about it. So I'm pleased for Newcastle, and I have a lot of friends that support Newcastle, and I hear their pain when they tell me all about Mike Ashley, or as they call him, the fat controller. And they're all very glad that he's no longer, if this is going to go through, which it looks like it is, they're very relieved. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, do you remember going back when Newcastle was almost at one point everybody's second team because of the way they played their football?
Yeah.
You remember under the Kevin Keegan era, the Andy Cole days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
lot of prospect there, and it was so it was so close that they came so close to winning the league. And you remember Kevin Keegan had his famous meltdown when he had the headphones on. I bloody love it if we beat them. I bloody love it. Still one of the greatest things, mind games in football there. So I'm secretly pleased, and I've seen a lot of people on social media, going in on the new owners. But let's face it, it's petty jealousy. Because if we got somebody that walked into Arsenal tomorrow, and not only were they rich like our current owner, but they were going to sort of put the money down on the table, we would all be very pleased. And it just makes me think that tweet that went out a few days ago, it was the one of Mbappe in the Newcastle shirt with him smiling, and the caption just said, "Ever since I was a child, I've dreamt for playing for Newcastle United." It wouldn't surprise me if that happens, and we'll be seeing goals scored by Mbappe and sort of passed to him by Haaland. It would be that good.
You could steal the Robin van Persie tagline there. The little child in me always wanted to be a Newcastle player, right? Ever since
I'm pleased for him, and you never know, something like that, by having more money players in the league, it may give the Cronkies a kick up their jacksie. Mm-hmm. Maybe the 2 million that they're over with their stadiums, their stadiums have gone over by 2 billion. Maybe they'll sell Arsenal and not want it anymore, and we'll get there's a guy from Nigeria that keeps talking about he'd love to buy Arsenal.
And
I'm all for that. So slightly biased because of my Newcastle ties, but I'm really pleased for him.
Yeah. No, definitely this crisis will change the football landscape, and it may even tempt Stan Kroenke to sell in his share in Arsenal. Who knows? Stranger things have happened, right, Rohan?
Correct. So just to put things into perspective, Stan Kroenke has, is a billionaire, but I think his billions are in single
10
digits
times
or
over
something. But MBS is 260 billion. So he's on another playing field altogether. He's in a league of his own. But that being said, what I was reading was interesting that that negotiations have progressed, but they seem to be fighting over 40 million. 300 million is what they're offering. Mike Ashley wants 340. So if 40 million is really what they're haggling over, Newcastle fans don't get excited too soon. We don't know where this can head, but hopefully they don't turn up to be the next Arsenal, or the owners don't turn out to be that way. But I don't think that these, generally, if I think about it, I don't think that these princes buy just to F around, right? They buy for the serious shit. And then now thinking about it, all of this FFP, self-sustainability, everything sounds good, but I think that now the way to balance football and the only way to sort of go forward is that all the teams get bought by royalty or these big ass, billionaires who that's going to level the playing field, right? Now everybody's got money to spend. So what are you going to do about it now, right? Like that's a playing field again. It's like nobody having the money.
The Queen of England's an Arsenal supporter, right?
Yeah, I know, right? But she doesn't have any money. I mean, it's England taxpayers who are paying the money. So yeah, I some like someone from the Middle East.
Find the money under the sofa to buy Arsenal.
You'll find it. You'll find it. I even saw.
So that could be the normalizing factor now going forward. That these mega billionaires pour in all their money, and it might not be very good for some clubs because self-sustainability is what will keep them up. Let's just assume that this whole situation of super high wages kicks about, and then there's another COVID situation and they just run out of the passion for the club and they want to sell it. Then how will they sustain in this period where there's no football happening? So
what's your opening bid, Ron?
Yeah, my opening bid will always be 40 million plus one. That's
the thing is, though, has anyone else ever had this thought that Newcastle fans have had such a contentious relationship with Mike Ashley, and Mike Ashley always he plays the role of the grumpy grandfather that can't wait to get rid of Newcastle. But every time something looks like it's going to happen, I always have this thing in the back of my mind that Mike Ashley don't want to sell Newcastle. There's something about it that seems he says it's almost like he likes the aggro and the drama, and it's part of this direct empire. I don't know. I mean, come on, you think of all the flack he's had, and it's not short of a few quid, and we're talking in millions. 300 million, and he wants 340 million. That's like me offering you something for 10. Yeah, you want to buy something for me for £10. Like a football or something like a chair, and I'm saying no, I want £10.99.
Yeah.
Are we really going to kill the deal for that amount? Are we really going to let this flow for that?
They'll definitely get it done. And to your point, Stan, it's always been like that with Mike Ashley. It's gotten so close, and then the deal got scuppered. But yeah, I think Newcastle can soon be most people's second team. We have no animosity right now against Newcastle. That may change in the coming years.
If this still goes through very, very quickly, who do you think the manager will be? I'm going for Pochettino.
Wow.
Allegri coming in. This is what Chat and I were actually talking about earlier, and basically we were discussing how it's going to go, and basically Allegri is going to be there, and it's going to be an Mbappe, and it's going to be all of these guys. But just to keep things real, Shelby is going to be the captain still.
Yeah, of course. Shelby will be the Steven Gerrard of Newcastle. Tony, you got any more points to add about the Newcastle takeover, Tony?
No, as I go back to what Stan was saying on the stadium, in LA is originally supposed to cost $2 billion, and it's ballooned up to $6 billion. So it's actually $4 billion over.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So things can happen there. Listen, we're gonna leave it there, unless anyone has any other points to make.
So I have two things to say. There's not an Arsenal fan circle where I am there, a roundup happening without me somehow getting Wenger in and sort of praising him in
I thought
some
you were going
way.
to talk about Aubameyang.
No, Wenger. So I think that if Wenger was still around, then this sort of message would not have gone out from the club. There would have been a more unified message from the club. And it wouldn't have been, and this again shows how important of a piece he was, and then how things are falling apart when he's not there. That's one. Second is that these stadiums now, which cost 2 billion, 4 billion, 6 billion. Even Tottenham have built theirs. And, you know, our board and Wenger were such visionaries going in that I just checked, and we built the Emirates Stadium for 390 million. That was the cost for us, which is peanuts actually. And that left us cash strapped for so many years. If it was now, then you could imagine for the next 50 years we would be in the doldrums.
And I think we're still paying on the stadium. It's not completely paid up, but we definitely dealt with that like a club who was going places.
I think the stadium's actually paid off now.
Yeah. It was paid off a number of years ago.
Okay. But that was when we were operating like a real club. The last 10 years, we've lost our way, Stan. Chawhat, thanks a lot, guys. Really interesting discussion today. Yep, we dug around, we found a few topics, and we got into it. Stan, you had a couple of things or one?
Just wanted to say as well, anybody that's watching, you may not have seen our video yet, which the Mr. Arsenal podcast put together, where a lot of us Arsenal podcasters sent a clipping of us dancing. So if you've not seen it, check out my Twitter timeline, check out Ray's Twitter timeline, Mr. Arsenal's podcast, if you want a little bit of a giggle. We had some fun with that one.
I'll put a link down there in the comments.
Yeah, do that.
Check it out, folks. Anything else? Or forever hold your peace until Sunday? That's not forever. Come on, you Gunners.
I'm good.
Up the Arsenal. Stay safe, everyone out there. Public service announcement. Thanks to the frontline workers. Can't say it enough. Stay safe out there. And we're out of here. We'll see you Sunday. We will do a quiz, but not an anagram quiz.
Another quiz.
There'll be another quiz, Tony. Not a chance to be controversial. But I'm not going to.
I was listening into Mr. Podcast today. He done a quiz, right? And you want to see his quiz compared to ours? Tough questions. It was like, the first ever player to get sent off for Arsenal, the first ever hat trick. And I put in a chat box, I was like, man, over in Fan Circle, we just do like player anagrams. That's like the level of our
and
quiz.
shit gets real.
Yeah, Ryan had a big thick book.
It was like mastermind on that one, man. It was like shit got real. It was tough questions.
We're all in lockdown. Our heads are gone. We don't need to think too much, right? We try to make it easier over here. All right. Until then, we're out of here. Come on, you Gooners. Up the Arsenal. Thanks for watching once again. We're out of here, Tony.